He was like, I'm going to run 20 Anavar in 2 grams of test. What do you think? First cycle. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you're in the UK, and if you're on cycle, you should definitely be getting your labs done. We're also brought to you by stromsports.com. That's Strom Sports Nutrition. If you're in the UK, you can get some great health stacks from them, especially, once again, if you're on cycle, you need to hit up Strom. If you're in Canada, you can go to supplementsource.ca and get great deals that change week to week. We are also brought to you, of course, by truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there on high-quality supplements here in the U.S. They've got literally every protein powder you can think of. We're brought to you by Patreon. We have a Patreon questions today. We're going to talk. You guys asked, so we're going to, the demand is there. Today, we're going to talk about Dave's Pro Charger. We had Gearheads, they're called, which are completely something different than I thought, Dave. Gearheads, they want to hear about the Pro Charger, so we're going to get to that today. And we had a bunch of questions, dude. Like, we got... What's that?
That's it. No, that's not saying anymore.
That's an upcoming program project you're working on, right? Maybe? Is that what it is? Well, you guys can roll that back, freeze frame it, blow it up, and you can get a little hint on Dave's upcoming project. We had a lot of great feedback on the last episode. We had a ton of questions, so we might need to power through some of them. But we had one that's come up before, and I thought, you know what, this would probably make for a good lead topic. He says, and by the way, once again, if you guys want to take part in the next show, then definitely comment below. We'll try to get it on the next program. If we don't comment again, plus comments, likes, all that stuff helps to boost our show. He says, some people preach that PEDs shouldn't be used by people who don't compete. I disagree. But where would you and Dave draw the line for the gym bro living the lifestyle but not planning on stepping on stage? Tren? Insulin? What do you think, man? And we have, like I said, talked about this before, but it's never been the main topic of the show.
10 milligrams of Anavar. That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
That's all you get.
Yep.
What about TRT? Are you allowed to do your TRT with that, or do you have to stop it too?
No, you have to stop it.
Oh, that's not much, Dave.
Yeah. There's a few compounds I would definitely be wary around, and then there's some compounds that are a little bit more. If you want to do it, then fine, but just bear in mind there can be some... I mean, Tren's an obvious one. It's like, I personally wouldn't use Tren with a client unless they were... Not unless they were... But there's a few occasions I'll use it with lifestyle sort of clients, but generally I'm not a fan of putting it in unless they are competing.
What if they ask, though? What if they're like, hey, mate, I like Tren. I want to run Tren, and I'm working with you.
If they want to run it, that's fine. But obviously, we go through the caveats of, look, this can cause anxiety. It can be long term. So as long as they're... And my big standpoint's always been the same. It's like, do what the effing hell you want, but just be aware of the risks you're taking so you make a decision based on all factors. And that's the bottom line. But yeah. I would have said things like AMP is a drug I wouldn't go near unless you're competitive, and even then I'd be wary of it.
Adenosine monophosphate.
Yeah.
And what does adenosine monophosphate do?
Well, one, it's a veterinary drug. Two, it basically makes you super, super vascular.
Yeah.
I mean, what advantage is that to somebody unless they're competing? And even then, it's not an advantage, but it's just a look that some people like to put on stage.
Yeah, it's cool. You know what I'm saying?
It is cool, but it can also be a bit nasty if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Not permanently, but it can give you some fucking mighty headaches.
Dude, I heard it makes you feel like garbage right after you take it.
Yeah, it can do. It can really make you feel rough. The other one I'd be wary around is... Forgotten. So you turn while I think of it.
Okay. So here's the thing. I never. So I feel like years ago I wasn't clear on why I would say I don't want to use these. I don't think a non-competitor should use fill in the blank. And it's interesting because I feel like there was some like pushback that people thought like, oh, well, you're gatekeeping, that you think that only a competitor deserves to run X compound. And that's not it at all. My thought is that with a contest prep, my mindset is completely different. The reality is, like, stepping on stage, you're kind of creating an illusion. Yeah, absolutely, you're getting peeled out of your freaking head, but what you're trying to do to look the way you look is something that we only hold for literally like 1 hour of one day. And I don't think that that's beneficial to anybody who's going to be, doing a lifestyle type thing, non-competitor. More so, I want to focus for a non-competitor on how can we get you looking really good and then hold you there. Like, say that you're like, hey, I want to be in shape for summer. Okay,
a maintainable look, yeah.
Yeah, a maintainable look. How can we do something that will get you looking crazy and also be able to hold that long term? Now, yeah, if we were to say turn a few knobs, maybe we could do the same thing to get you reaching that contest, peak look. But like, what benefit is that going to be except for like I'm going to the beach that day? And it's like you hold this for 1 hour and then once you drink water, it's gone. Like, it's not like reasonable. So things that I'm considering are compounds like Halo. Doesn't make as much sense to me. If I'm looking at, I would much, and it does work, and it can work in my opinion in certain off-season situations, like to push through strength plateaus intermittently, not taken every day. Compounds like Tren, sure, we could use Tren in a non-competitor, but it's definitely something that if we don't have to, I mean,
yeah,
the less we can. My opinion's always this: is that the less we need to use to get you to reach the look that you want to achieve, the better. You know what I mean? The more sustainable it is.
The more sustainable, I would say, definitely.
So I would prefer, say, a contest prep cycle, just as an example, might be test, add in mast, and maybe as mast prop, and then Tren in the last 6 weeks, and then Winstrol in the last 4, and then Halo in the last 10 days, so that you can look a certain way on a certain day, versus for a guy who's doing a non-competitive program, it might just be like test and long-acting mast, and maybe we add in a small amount of Tren for the last 8 weeks, but it's something that you can just like roll with and keep the look is more what I'm thinking, not taking things that are going to be so toxic that, because once you start taking compound 2, you're on the clock as to how soon you have to stop taking that compound.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm completely with you. I would say there is a whole class of drugs I wouldn't consider, and that's diuretics.
Yeah. There's a great example. It's not going to do what you want in any kind of,
it's just not sustainable.
Fashion.
It's just not sustainable. Men, I would be a little bit more cautious around. I'm not saying it can't be used. I think it can be used, but it's that risk reward element. It's not a compound you're going to be on for very long periods. It's not a compound you're going to be able to visit on a regular basis. By all means, try it, see how you get on with it, but just have that reservation that it's not something I can build into every cycle or have for long-term use. And buy Scott a bib.
Yeah, I might need one. Thankfully, yeah. I always wear dark clothes, so if I spill coffee, I'm good.
Well, it's Alex's top anyway. I mean, just use it to mop the tea up. It doesn't really matter, does it? And then, so that's definitely one I agree. Halo's another one. For some unknown reason, I still can't think of the compound I'm thinking of.
Listen, orals in general are something that I'm not as fond of for a non-competitor to be used in a longer-term fashion. You know, I feel like if we're adding an oral in, we're getting to the end of the cycle. Like, okay,
Yes.
things have been going good. Last 4 weeks, let's add in this, you know, or maybe intermittently in an off-season push where we're trying to break through some strength. But, yeah, you know, because especially orals, man, it's like that toxicity is just going to keep building up once you start it. So you're on the first time the first day of your oral is one step closer to the end of your cycle, you know?
Again, it's a compound that needs limited exposure. It needs controlled exposure. The compound I was thinking of was more of an exotic, and it's a growth
DHB?
factor. No, it's a growth factor compound.
Growth factor compound. And it's not, you would have said IGF.
It's not IGF. To be honest, I think with IGF, it's... If you run it at the dosing you need to run it to get real muscular results,
yeah,
it's not a pleasant compound to run, and it's really cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Myostatin suppressants, they just don't work unless you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars. So mostly the high C stuff is just garbage. But it's going to annoy the shit
You'll
out
think
of me
of
now.
it like 10 minutes after we finish the show.
Yeah, it's going to annoy the hell out of me now.
Growth factor, huh?
Yeah, it's a growth factor agent.
Yeah. Yeah, you know.
Okay, if I give you the side effects, when you take it, it aspirates through the lungs, makes you an immediate shortness of breath, and causes a smooth bowel contraction.
Oh, PT 141?
No, that makes you horny. PGF2A.
PGF2. I knew it. I couldn't think. Yeah, okay. I never.
That's definitely a drug I wouldn't be messing with unless you're competitive. Even then, I'd be questioning it.
Yeah, didn't you say you used that one time? And how did that go?
So PGF2A it does a couple of things. It's actually, as a topical, it can be used as a fat loss agent, and it will spot reduce fat.
Okay, yeah.
It kills fat cells effectively. As an injectable, it's rumored to actually promote site growth. I can't say whether it does or not, but God, it makes you feel like dog shit.
Yeah.
It's horrible. You feel like crap on it. And not really anything specific, just a general... Bleh.
Did you, now be honest, did you have to ever change your pants after you took it?
The first time I took it, I was actually sat on the toilet just to be careful.
Just to preemptively be ready, huh?
Actually, you can get to a point where you control that side of it and where you don't pass. But what I found is when I got to the point where I was controlling it so I could take it whenever I wanted, I wasn't going to shit myself.
I'm doing really good. I'm not going to crap myself today when I take my illegal drugs.
I ended up being constipated.
Oh, okay.
So it was like, I can't win here. But yeah, PGF2A is a rather unique little thing. And I think that's it. When you start getting into those real quirky sort of exotic things,
yeah,
you know, from an experimental point of view, it's okay in the sense of if you want to sort of play an experiment, but they're just not in any way long-term sustainable.
And let's be honest, I do think there is an element of gear use that is like, hey, I just want to know. You know, DNP, I just want to know. You know, it's like there's no real reason to have used it otherwise than...
Not at all.
You know, I can't think of any contest preps that I've worked with somebody or my own where I've been like, man, we got to hit the DNP now. It's always one of those things where like, well, I want to see what it does. You know, same thing with insulin, same with GH, same with everything. And the more exotic you get, the less we really needed it. Like, and, you know, truly needed it. You know,
Esiclin or Novatol.
Oh yeah, so Exiclin has not been around in my time of bodybuilding. No.
So now it's Novatol or whatever it is. I can't remember how you say it.
We talked about that years back. It's from Spain, isn't it?
I thought it was from Russia.
Okay, I thought we saw it, or maybe it was like it was legal in Spain for up to a point. And it's
basically it's a site irritant, causes localized swelling in a muscle, which makes it appear bigger.
Huh. I wonder what that does to your inflammation markers. You know what I mean?
Probably puts them through the roof.
But you look jacked.
Yeah. There is some science to support a small amount of site growth with it as well, but again, it's just not. There's usually two reasons you can't support the exotic stuff. It's either cost,
yeah,
or it's side effects. It's usually one of those two. It's either it's just too damn expensive,
yeah,
or it's the side effects are just too harsh to tolerate.
Yeah, I could see that. All right. Well, I hope that answers the question. Anything else you can think of offhand? Because I have no problem with
M-Tren.
Okay. Well, I'd put that in the same category as Anadrol, honestly, or Halo.
Would you?
Maybe not quite Anadrol, but I'd put it in the same category as Halo.
Don't you be dissing oxys now. Don't you come on this show and start being discreditation against oxys, you horrible individual.
Maybe intermittently. Toward the end of a phase where we're really trying to focus on strength, a small dose, say on leg day and pull day, something like that, and that's it. 2 times a week, something like. I could see that. I never used it. I know you had. I never used it because my thought had always been contest prep. I'm already on trend. Why don't I do something completely different like Halo? Halo would always be my go-to.
I never really rated M-Tren, to be fair. No, it could have been crap quality drugs. I don't think it was, but we never know for sure.
Yeah.
But it never really did anything for me. I found it a complete waste, and I went up to 2.5 milligram.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right to me, man.
Yeah, that's a hit.
I remember the oral I started at 250 micrograms oral. And then I went to 500 oral, and then this is the one time. Why was I taking it? Because I wanted to see what it did, and I was dieting.
But I had the same with Tren. I didn't get a huge hit off Tren either. I found Tren very. Yeah, I was actually incredibly disappointed with Tren because of all the stories I'd heard and all the this shit's rocket fuel. It'll do this. It'll do that. Not really.
Guys, I think Dave got some fake trend. Vote below. Comment below if you want to see Dave run a real trend cycle.
All I can say is that, and I won't say his name, but a professional bodybuilder was running the same lab, same batch. Doesn't mean the world, and I get that, and I fully appreciate that. And it was...
Zach Khan.
It was destroying him.
Okay. Huh.
And I was like, I'm not getting much off it, really.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, like I said, I started 250, went to 500, went to 750, and then basically had heat stroke because it was summer, and it was bad, man. I was like crashing out, like trying to work outside and in hot warehouses and stuff, man. I was like, oh, this has got to go. This is not for me.
Yeah, no, I never really got a huge amount from it.
In fact, that might have been the only thing I threw out. I've given away a couple things, but that one I think I just tossed it. Or, you know what? No, you know what I did with it?
I threw the PGF2A out, but I did have like a bottle this size because I bought it from a veterinary supplier, and it was like half a liter of the stuff.
I hid it in my apartment. Like just to stash it somewhere, and I think it was like, I can't remember where, it was like by the furnace or an event or something like that. So one day somebody's gonna find these little yellow triangular tabs of methyltren, and they're gonna think it's something else. They're gonna think it's like,
they'll probably think it's something like rat poison or something. It won't be far off, really.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I think that maybe covers it. You guys tell us, where's your line as a non-competitor? What do you not want to do? And like I said before, leave us questions. Because Dave, I got to tell you, man, we have a lot of them.
We all know that creatine is great for muscle building, but were you aware of its benefits for brain health?
I think it's pronounced creatine.
No, it's definitely pronounced creatine.
No, it's definitely creatine. I'm positive of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said. creatine.
Creatine?
Well, regardless of what you want to call it, creatine plays an important role in brain health. Research demonstrates that your brain needs a significant amount of ATP to perform difficult tasks. Supplementing with creatine will improve phosphocreatine stores, helping your brain produce more ATP. So if you're not on creatine now, give it a try. Check out truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. They got all your basic health supplements like creatine, protein powder, everything else you can think of. Use our code THINK to help support our programming, get some additional savings, and get a great supplement. Yeah, it's definitely creatine.
There was one on Patreon I really want to make sure we cover today. To paraphrase it, guy has never done a cycle before. He's starting his first cycle. He's going to run, I can't remember the duration he said, but here's his dosage. He was like, I'm going to run 20 Anavar in 2 grams of test. What do you think? First cycle. 2 grams of test.
Holy fuck.
I mean, like, it doesn't make sense because the Anavar's like, well, I want to watch the liver. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Look, do what you want, but that's a lot. I mean, that's a 2 gram test only cycle is a lot for anybody as a test only cycle. But I agree the 1 compound, but I would be much further down the 400, 500 mark if I was you.
Dude, even 300, 350 even, you know? Like, leave yourself some room.
Well, at least, 2 gram a test sounds good. Anavar is a bit overboard.
Yeah. Thanks, Ty. We appreciate your input, brother. Yes.
Yeah, it's like that. I'm going to order a Big Mac, double Big Mac Whopper, whatever meal it's called, but I'm going to have a Diet Coke because I'm watching my weight. Right. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's a circumstance of that he just doesn't have enough education yet, which in that case, I encourage him to he is a Patreon subscriber. Honestly, and this is no knock to him, had it been somebody who just commented blankly on YouTube that really we didn't know, I'd be like, oh, he's pulling our leg. But, I'm pretty confident he means this. That's all I will say, sir. That is a lot of drug, particularly for the first cycle. I think you'll be surprised how well you respond from a quarter of that. Yeah. And less sides, easier to imagine going into your first cycle having to try to manage the sides of 2 grams of test for someone, Yeah, well, to put it into something relatable, that's like going from a 200 horsepower car and suddenly jumping into 1,000 horsepower and expecting to be able to drive it competently without any previous experience, And we do have listeners who will appreciate that analogy now that we know we've got some gearheads on board. I like my car analogies. I find it a good way of explaining drugs. For some reason, it seems to work well. Yeah, I use that car analogies too sometimes, like talking about nitrous. We don't hit the nitrous in first gear. You know what I mean? Let's get the we're gonna be wheelie spinny. Yeah. All right, let me see what else we have here. And you guys are freaking awesome with all the comments and everything, your positivity. We appreciate it. Oh, wow. This guy's name is actually Gearhead 157. He says, but I think he might mean the other kind of gear. I'm on 750 test C, 600 mass, 200 tren, 60 Anavar per day. 60 Anavar on workout days. 20 milligrams of MK677, 25 milligrams of GW501516. I just got retatrutide. Should I drop the MK as I feel as if I'm not cutting as fast? I'm using the MK because GH is more expensive, LOL. From a GH point of view, I don't think the MK is particular. We discussed this last week, actually. I don't know if we discussed it on or off air, though. I don't think the MK is going to be particularly effective, and if anything, it's just increasing your appetite. So that's definitely a compound I wouldn't be looking at. If I was looking for a cheap alternative to GH, which GH is relatively cheap these days, particularly if you're only running a couple of IU a day, then you could look at the GHRPs. But I think even then, you're probably going to be more cost effective at just sticking to IU GH, and even if you did it every other day. Though I appreciate that the initial outlay is higher, in that you're going to be spending a lot initially to get that.
True.
Not a big fan of Cardarine myself. Don't think it's having a huge impact in your total anabolics. It's a bit like the 20 Anavar on the 2 gram of gear job, isn't it? You know, it sort of seems a little bit like, is it really
I do get a
worth
good
it?
fat loss benefit from it when I've used it. I've noticed a good benefit from that regard, but cost to benefit, you know, Scott and I maybe I should go back and find it. What I said is will Cardarine end you? I think that was the title of the show. Because somebody said, they were like, you know, you mentioned that Cardarine could cause cancer. There's a study to show that it actually stops cancer. And so Scott looked at that study and he was like, yeah, so this study shows that it will actually help with this kind of cancer. And this study shows that it will cause all these other types. So, you know, there's...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just think there are better fat burners out there. You know, if you're going to add something for a fat burner, I'd be looking more at T3 Glen, that sort of stuff, than I'd be looking at Cardarine personally.
Yeah.
Where I think Cardarine's a little bit unique is around its lipid effects and its cardiovascular improvement. But I think that's a very specific effect for a very specific situation. I know a lot of people were keen on Cardarine to try and offset the cardiovascular down regulation you got from Tretton in the sort of strongman sort of era, where I can see, I can see something there when you're top of your field and you're wanting something, but otherwise I'm not a fan. But even if it didn't commonly contribute to cancer, and I know the doses in the studies were generally much higher than what we'd see in recreational use. Yeah. I'm still just a bit wary about it. That's the bottom line with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great for endurance, but and like you said, cholesterol, but cost to benefit. I like that word, wary. You know, it's good. Let's see. Chris says you mentioned people who want to stay on year round. For an interesting topic, what would be a good year-round cycle if people were interested in going that route? Cheers, fellas. Dave, follow-up question. If you do it year-round, is it still a cycle?
Well, by definition, no, because the cycle is a... Broderick hates the word cycle.
I know he does.
He fucking has an ape shit about it, but cyclitic would mean rotatory.
Yeah.
But so it comes back around, which it's not doing because it's permanent.
Of course. I get it. But I still like the word cycle because we are coming back to where we started.
For me, I think common terminologies are useful because people understand them.
True.
Whether they're technically correct, I'm not that bothered about, but I get why he has a bugbear on it.
Hormonally, we're coming back to where we started. Now, not necessarily to...
Well, not necessarily with most people.
we're going, like, if we're on TRT, you know, like, we're coming back to TRT. So we've just, you know, the course is over. The cycle is over. I don't know.
Think if you're going to be using an elevated dose year round, I would be reluctant to do anything above just test.
Yeah.
Just for the simple reason that the body copes with it so well. I get the benignness of something like Primo being added in, but then you've got that cholesterol suppression issue, which is difficult to manage with Primo. So if you were looking at a secondary compound, I'm probably leaning towards MAST. Personally, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's the way to go, but if someone was hell-bent on doing it, I would be test only or test and MAST at a push.
And look at your labs. I mean, that's the reason people come off, is to get their labs back in order, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people with surprisingly decent labs at long-term exposure to elevated levels, so it is, from a lab management point of view, it's doable, but there's things that labs don't pick up, and you would need to be... I think, for me, the benefit I think isn't there.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see I think you'll see more accelerated muscle growth from 2 good solid cycles a year.
Yep.
With a correct TRT in between than you would from running a TRT plus year round.
I 100% agree with you, and I had even seen it in my own life, honestly, because I went through a phase of not dropping below 300 tests, and I didn't see any additional, I honestly should have just done TRT, because then I ran into other issues. My hematocrit got higher, and then I had to do phlebotomy and blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I think when you start to stack in the extra management that comes into play of running an elevated level for an extended period of time, I think the costs, and I don't mean the financial costs, I mean the preventive costs end up being greater than the benefits you're getting.
You know what else you've mentioned before, and I think it resonates true here too, is you're only gonna push, we can all push real hard, you know what I mean, but we can't be gunned to, foot to the floor gunning it 365 days. You can for 16 weeks, right? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's how are you going to maintain the motivation to take advantage of, because before you know it, you're kind of this week I'm just not doing as good. You're not taking advantage of it then,
Yeah, and I think there are a few people that can maintain that level of consistency, but they are rare.
Yeah.
They are rare. And so I think because most of us live a life, that having periods of time when we can be a little bit less on it and spend time with family and do social things and all that sort of stuff, downtime is easier to accommodate things like that. Whereas full-blown cycle, I'm wanting to get everything I can out of that because I don't want to be there for super long periods of time. And I mean, I pushed it on the length of time I stayed on, and that's what caused a lot of the problems. That and the overall size. But I mean, I wasn't being shy with my dosing either, so I get that that's a very extreme example. But yeah, I think these days, I think time off is not just beneficial from a health point of view, it's beneficial from a progress point of view as well.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to stop, regroup, you know what I mean? Figure out, okay, this is going well, this isn't. What am I going to do to change that to make better progress,
Yeah, stuff like injury management, things like that as well. I think it all comes into play. You cannot hammer your body 24/7.
Yeah.
Because it breaks. It's just as simple as that. It does break.
All right, this guy says, so Scott, you mentioned when doing test EQ cycle, you like running MPP at the beginning. My question is, how many weeks until you would drop the MPP out? And when you drop the MPP, would you raise the EQ? Also, how long of a cycle would this be overall from start to finish? And what milligrams of each would you do? Also ancillaries. I think the dosing would depend on your experience. At the time, I'd been using more gear, so the doses were going to be higher. Would that apply to everybody listening to the show? Absolutely not. Everybody's at their own place. There might have been some people here that would be like, man, I'd take more than that, But, basically at the time, I think it was 1.25 grams a test, 800 EQ, and then I think I initially would do 300 NPP, but it even found even 50 every other day seemed to be beneficial. And I would run that for the first 8 weeks. And by then the equipoise was really built up and I felt like it was really coming into its own and I didn't need the EQ. So I didn't change any of the other dosing, but that point I might have added in some injectable D-ball or something for the last 6 weeks, something like that.
Something that you might just happen to have lying around in your box that you found.
No, back in those days, not in those days. Those days are the reason I have things left over today.
Scott's cycle design is what's there.
Scott's 60? Never would have guessed. Yes. There's people who still think that, okay, yeah, I'm 60, guys. No. Hi, I'm on...
You look it.
Thanks, Dave. I'm on
That's
gear
okay,
for
mate.
an 18 months blasting cruise. My CRP is very high. What can I do to lower it? I'm currently on 550 test and 350 EQ.
Well, if that's your blast, it's not particularly aggressive, so I would be asking...
But for 18 months.
He said blast and cruise for 18 months, so... What's your cruise dose period? How long have you been on your blast? But I suspect the CRP might be coming from something else, like infection.
I wonder what kind of gear he's using. Like, is this have super solvents in it? That could be pushing inflammation markers up.
It could. Also, it depends. Is what's your definition of super high CRP?
Yeah.
I mean, an infection's gonna put CRP. Could easily put CRP into the 20s.
He said my CRP is very high. It's 13.
It's high. I wouldn't say it's very high. It's high. That could potentially indicate infection or inflammation, depending on. That's it. Sound things like hay fever can spike CRP as well. So, are there any symptoms of illness? Is there any allergy symptom? Is there anything else that could explain the CRP? Or is it most definitely going to be gear?
Yeah, I wonder. Because I do think there are more products out there now with super solvents. I had a guy message me yesterday who was like, "Hey, what would you suggest I do to cut my test 400 because it's causing a lot of pain?" And if you have test 400, there's no question you've got some very caustic solvents in there, and just running that gear alone, you could see elevated inflammation levels.
Yeah. But I mean, his actual push itself doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Someone wants to talk about boobies. I'm down with that. Let's talk about boobies.
Perfect pair. That was the perfect pairs from last week. Guys, I got to take a break to do the whole like, share, subscribe thing, but I also want to say thank you to you. The internet's kind of a weird place, in case you didn't know, and I'm glad that we've put the community together that we have. I'm grateful to read your comments. In fact, I know a lot of YouTubers that don't read comments. I read all of them, and I try to get back to everybody. So if you comment, I will see it, and I'll try to get back to you. Also, the like button is absolutely free of charge. You don't have to pay anything to hit it, and it does help us out a ton. It's not going to push us into your algorithm, but it will help other people to hopefully find the show. So if you like our stuff, please try to help us out. Question for Dave. Is there a problem with having too much free testosterone? If you run test high, 3 grams, would the high free test mean that you're having spillover from your testosterone? SHBG is crashed. Estradiol is in range with Primo as an AI.
3 grams of test, and you're running Primo as an AI. How much fucking Primo are you running? Or 3 gram total test and Primo?
It says if you run test high, 3 grams. No, now understand too, there's no punctuation here. It's just if you run test high, 3 grams does the free testosterone.
No, the free testosterone I wouldn't be concerned about, but I'm assuming if you're running 3 grams of test, your Primo is going to be... Test. Yeah, your Primo... I mean, I've done 3 gram of test. It's definitely impacting. I would think that your Primo is going to be 1.52. There is a point where the estrogen... So the estrogen conversion for the test isn't linear. So as the test goes up, the estrogen conversion starts to, ease. The curve comes down.
There's only so much aromatase enzyme in the body, right?
Yeah, there's only so much you can produce, irrespective of how much of a fat fuck you are. So I would suspect that whereas if you were running 500 of tests, you'd probably need 500 of Primo to manage that. If you're running 3 gram of tests, you're not going to need 3 gram of Primo. You're probably going to be 1.5 grams, maybe 2. But that's still a fucking big cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't say there's an upper limit to free test at the end of the day, but you are going to produce more androgen receptors as a result to utilize what's going on. but it's the downstream stresses that start to become limiting. It's not having enough AI to engage with the test. It's the amount of stress you're creating downstream that becomes the limiting factor.
Normally, I'd say I could hold it, but I got to pee so bad. I got to take a break, Dave. I got to go. What man.
Fuck. Well, do you want me to... people were asking about what I'm doing with the car. So
hold
on.
Why don't I give you another question? Because I want to save that for the end, or as we finish up the questions. I'll ask you this one, and I'll be back in a minute. Question for Dave.
Okay.
He said that he used to drive 20 IU of GH. How was his experience with fat loss? Did he do any kind of potassium consumption, etc.? Did he get leaner? He was full of water is clear. There is a rumor that if you take so much GH that you can't get fat.
GH. So when I took high doses of GH.
Yes.
Right. So the time stamp is 42 minutes and 18 seconds. Run.
I gotta go.
No. Water retention was definitely a problem, but at the time I was running particularly high levels of GH, I was also starting to creep into the kidney issues. So it was a very mixed bag of what my body was doing, and water retention was a continual issue. I was leaner, however, than I thought. Now, when I went into hospital with my kidney failure, I was 415 pounds. When I came out a week later, having been on IV diuretics, I was 355 pounds with some visible abs. Not fully out, but you could definitely see where they were supposed to be and what was going on. Now, for a period of time prior to that, I had been trying to reduce what I thought was excessive body fat. Did the GH play a factor in that condition I presented when I dropped the water? It may well have done. I don't know for certain. But I had a combination of obviously high GH, high insulin, which is going to drive a shitload of glycogen and water into the cell. There was definitely spillover. But I was also dealing with renal issues. So at that point, we'd have been 3A, 3B. So we were in the EGFRs of 40-ish. So I had a growing amount of water retention from that as well. But all I can tell you is that when I came out of hospital at 355, I was significantly leaner than I thought I was. And I had a visible sort of ab definition coming through. So was the GH a factor in that? Could have very well been.
All right. I didn't want to miss the Pro Charger talk. That was the other thing. So I want to hear all about it.
That was actually incredibly quick for a piss. I'm quite impressed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just went in the corner. I just didn't even leave my office. I just,
Ball.
Yeah. No, just around the floor. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I had to go so bad. I chugged a bunch of water. I drank one of these bottles before the show, and I was like, I don't really have to pee right now. We'll just record. I'll be fine.
That's a decent water bottle size. What's up with you?
That's a good water bottle. This one's 32 ounces or 40 ounces.
What's that in metric, young man? Speak English.
I think it's a liter. Maybe
2.
a little bit more. 2.2. It's good. All right, so we have a guy who has won 3 out of 3 of his classes in Masters.
Well done.
And he's going into the 4th now. And he says he's doing something different. He's got no coach. He's doing this on his own. He says he's already qualified for nationals, so this show is for fun and experience and experiments.
Okay.
Then 2026, he's going to do a national show. He says, love you guys and all the knowledge. So here's the experiment. 3 times a week, he's going to do 0.75 test, 225 a week, 0.75 mass, 225 a week, 0.5 primo, 105 or 150 per week, tren ace, 33.3 milligrams, and that's going to be 100 milligrams per week for a total of 700 milligrams. Pull everything a week out and add Winstrol Is this a good plan, guys? I wish he told us what his original thing was. Like, what was he doing before, you know?
Well, I don't think it really matters, does it? Because this is just pure experimentation. So,
but it would help us to understand. You know what I mean? Like, what if he says that, like, oh, before I just was running TRT. You know, I'm sure he wasn't, but you know what I mean? It's like, then it
Dosing seems sensible in the sense of total milligrams and the split, the drug choices. I don't have any issue with it from a point of view of comp prep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see anything there. Now, this used to be a big difference between the UK and the States. Was the UK, going back some time, we used to always pull our injectables 10 days out and just run in on orals only.
Yeah.
And as a result, we tended to come in drier and harder, but not as full. Yeah. Where Americans used to always run their injectables right up to the show, and they tended to come in fuller, but maybe not quite as granitely hard as their UK counterpart. So I think he'll probably find that as long as he's lean, that he might look drier and harder, but he may see some change in fullness from that. Other than that, I don't really see an issue with it, to be honest. I mean, I tend to pull injectables out of strongmen, or at least lower them a week out, so that they come in fresher and less drained.
My main
and that
concern,
seems to work very well. Sorry, yeah, go on.
Sorry, I thought you were finished. I was just going to say that my main concern is getting lumps on stage with injections close to the show. So Tuesday, Wednesday is usually the last time I would take a shot anyway. And sometimes we might even pull the test out. I don't usually go. It's funny because I don't know. I don't know if I'm alone in this now. I thought that a lot of people did this. But Andrew said on Blood, Sweat, and Gear the other day, he was like, well, traditionally most coaches, Skip and I, will both go to PROP, like fast-acting test at the end. I generally keep it a long-acting test and never have a problem with that as long as you're managing estrogen the way you want. But, you know, my thought is that if most of this gear is still going to be in his system. Yeah. You know, so it's not going to make a difference. And guys who travel to shows and they're coming in several days early, I'll tell them, like, hey, you don't just take your last shot before you leave. And then the orals are more important. Managing orals when you're doing 4 shows, that gets interesting. You know what I'm saying? So I have no problem with anything he's doing here. I guess nothing.
And I think people forget. I think I see people ask this a lot, that, stop the injectables. Yeah, but I'm going to have nothing in my system. It's not leaving that fast. Even as a prop, it's not leaving that fast. You've still got this 72 hours, It's not going to get out of your system that quick. So, when you are dropping injectables, don't think a week later there's going to be nothing there. There's still going to be a hell of a lot of gear circulating.
Oh, yeah. I might have people not take tests because we already have all that test. So, like, maybe we cut the test out Sunday before the show and then still run Mast and Tren. I always go with Tren Ace, so if I can get that a little closer to the show, it's a good idea. I did have Dave one time, and I may have told you this story before. I ran out of Tren like Sunday. And I just needed to take that additional shot on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. And thankfully I had a buddy at the gym who told me, oh man, I have some really good Tren. I make it myself. It's real smooth. I'll bring you some. Guess what, dude? I took that shot and my glute freaking swelled up like a tennis ball was on it.
See it on stage. Obviously, I don't judge anywhere near as much as I used to, so I don't see it as much as I did, but you used to see it on the stage all the time. Weird lumps in shoulders and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Judges don't look too kindly on those things, Scott,
no, I agree.
Love all the shows you produce. Question about any of the shows, acne scars and what to do about them. I thought he had something to do about getting on stage, but I guess not. A question for any of the shows about acne scars and what to do to help them. And not affect your look on stage. So, if he's talking about discoloration, like at recent acne, and now there's like a red spot, generally the tan is going to cover a lot of that up. Your skin is going to look more even with any discolorations. Would laser help? Yeah. I had
appeal stuff and things like that potentially. I don't know enough about skincare to really know what you could do for acne scarring, but I would have thought some cosmetic dermapeal type stuff might help.
I was very prone to acne as a kid, and it wasn't until I ran my second course of Accutane as an adult that I actually got my skin to clear up. And I did do a high-end laser treatment. It was my friend. It was VJ, my friend, partner in crime. VJ, his wife, does that stuff, and she worked at a place where she had this like real fancy machine, and they went in. This is 10 years ago, and I think there was some change, some improvement. What do they do? Look into derma rolling. That could be something worth looking into. They're like it's like these little tiny micro needles on a roller, Dave. And it basically just like breaks up the surface of the skin, calling for new collagen, and it breaks down scar tissue over time. It's a long-term process, but I'm confident with where I'm at this point. But those are options. But yeah, as far as the discoloration of like newer acne scarring, a lot of that is going to get covered up with the tan. Why do AAS negatively impact lipids and cholesterol, or lipids/cholesterol?
So, from a point of view of increasing LDL, we use cholesterol as a raw material to produce hormones. We're not producing hormones anymore, so we're not using it. So we end up with an excess. HDL adulteration is more significant in drugs that lower estrogen. So AIs, with the exception of aromasin, and drugs like Mast Primo have a significant impact on HDL because they lower estrogen in the liver, and liver is key management system in supporting and managing our cholesterol levels. So there you go.
Yeah,
that's the best you're getting out of me today.
It like basically there's an enzyme that catabolizes and breaks down HDL, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a lot of it's around estrogen levels as well. So as we lower estrogen, that has a more significant impact on HDL management as well. So there's a couple of processes going on.
Okay, we've got a guy who wants to do his first cycle. He's on TRT at 200 a week. I think that's what he's saying. Been on TRT, 200 milligrams a week for 15 weeks and planning to ramp up to 500 milligrams a test, increasing by 100 milligrams each week. I'd like to add Masteron starting at 200 milligrams up to 400 milligrams and possibly Anavar for the last 6 weeks. I also have Proviron, but unsure if I should include it.
Proviron you won't need with MAST for the simple reason it's not going to do... All right, it's a mild AI, but the lowering of SHBG is going to be significant with MAST anyway. However, that's a total dosing of 900 a week, which I think is excessive for a first cycle. I would keep total anabolics to 500 at the max, not including orals. Don't mind a little bit of an oral on top. I don't see any real benefit to the progressive.
Yes, that's what I was thinking too.
Apart from maybe a reduction in total anabolic exposure over the period of time. It would depend how long he's planning on running for. I would either go 200-300 tests, 200 MAST, or just go all test, personally.
Yeah. I think that people think they're going to take that test and all of a sudden, like, whoa, I'm feeling good. I'll try a little bit more and see how I feel on that. But it's a process of, you take that more, you take 100 milligrams more, and it's like you're not going to really, actualize that for a couple weeks of repeatedly doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's human nature. More is better. It's a base sort of thing we seem to have as humans. Is more is better. More is better. And it's not always the case. And as doses get higher, you'll find that the increase required in dose to see a significant change in effects is much greater. The difference in effects between 1 gram and 2 gram total is not the same as the difference in effects between 2 gram and 1 gram total, even though you've gone up a gram each time. You'll see a smaller change in effects from 2 to 3 than you will from 1 to 2. And that gets progressively worse as the dose gets higher. So the change from 3 to 4 is significantly less from 2 to 3, and again from 1 to 2, and so on and so forth.
Oh, I liked this comment. Now, Dave, you missed out on being in the UK. You didn't have the experience coming. You would have, I'm sure you would have, if you lived in the US in the 80s and 90s, going down to Tijuana to get your supplies. But this guy says, if you're desperate for real gear, just go to Mexico. Mexican pharmaceuticals come from legit labs, and they love American money. Just saying. I used to personally know the largest supplier to the States. She supplied the Chargers, the Raiders, 49ers, Cowboys, and the Rams. She also supplied WWF, WCW, Ohio, and a host of other areas. The state of Ohio. She was the sponsor for gear for Ohio. She got busted because of 2 girls I knew that got caught walking across the border. She was extradited to San Diego for 6 months. During her time in the clink, those athletes suddenly got noticeably smaller and softer. There were still pharmacies willing to sell real stuff even without prescription, or there are doctors down there that are willing to give prescriptions for whatever you need. Generally down there, the pharmacist will tell you tell them that you have an issue and they'll prescribe whatever you need. At least that's the way it was. And I guess it's not that way anymore, though, Dave. I guess that there's a lot of fakes in Mexico.
No,
you what?
I have no idea. It's completely... Broderick spoke about going down to Mexico in the early days to buy stuff.
There's a lot of fakes now in Mexico, and there are underground labs that are on the shelves, and some of them are fake underground labs. So it's especially at the border towns. And if you get away from that, you can get like real testosterone, real Proviron, but not a lot. It's not like it used to be. I knew people too who used to do that. I had a friend, former training partner, Dave, and he told me stories of going down there and loading up on like the injectable D-ball. He actually showed me a vial. It was like a long, skinny vial, and it was water-based, mixed in B12. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, I remember the long 10 mils and 20 mils that were like really stupidly long, skinny things that were weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's very similar to Turkey was for the UK. You used to be able to go to Turkey, go to the pharmacist. They had catalogues on the counters, and you could just go through and pick what you wanted.
Yeah.
And some still do that, but there is much more fake stuff creeping into Turkey. I actually know somebody who went to Turkey for some surgery, and the hospital prescribed them growth.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the growth was fake.
Oh, you're kidding. You're kidding me.
Because he messaged me, and it was Lily, and I know Andrew who does the investigations for Lily, and he messaged me and said, I've got this Lily, but all the reference numbers, all the serial numbers are the same.
Oh.
I said, send me some pictures. I sent them to Andrew and said, look, this guy legit through a script, through a pharmacist, and he's concerned this isn't legit. And Andrew looked into it and went, no, that's all fake. We haven't produced that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's much more of a problem there as well. So it seems like it's a very similar scenario.
So I recently heard about Turkey. Now, this is nothing I've done any research on. This is heard secondhand that a friend of mine has a client that was in Turkey for some other business thing. And she said, hey, while I'm here, should I pick up my prescription estrogen and anything else, because I can get it at the pharmacy. So then it turns out she tried, and there was no place that would give it to her without a prescription. And I guess, once again, guys, I'm not trying to spread any rumors here, but them having regulations against trans, that they don't want to be responsible for facilitating that type of thing. So that because of that, there has been crackdowns on the purchasing of hormones in Turkey.
May
Correct me
well
if I'm
be.
wrong, anybody.
No,
you guys tell us, but that's what I heard.
I haven't spoke to anyone that's been over there for sourcing for a while, but I do know that fakes are definitely much more prevalent than they used to be.
Okay.
So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
All right. We had some other questions too. We can't get to all of them, guys. I wish we could. Leave them again though. If we didn't get to your question, we'd be happy to tackle them. We had a bunch of questions like this. Dave, what size Pro Charger are you trying to get, and what platform are you running it on? Fellow gearhead here.
So, what the plan is as it stands. So I have a Dodge Ram 5.7 Hemi 2013, and I have replaced the internals, so it's forged pistons, forged rods, everything else, ARP stud work, forged crank. Then I've added a cam, which is heavy on the exhaust side, so it's more compatible with supercharging. I've added a 6.4 intake manifold, 6.4 throttle body, and a 6.4 cold air intake, and it's been tuned by FRP. And he's a Hemi guy, if anyone knows him. He's an American, so it's a remote tune.
Okay.
It's got long headers with an aftermarket custom system going back from there.
So this is a truck, you're telling us. This is a pickup truck.
Right. So
Okay.
there's two.
That's the part I understood so far.
There's two truck projects. So this is the first project.
Okay.
I'm gonna be adding a uprated fuel system from MMX, and then I'm gonna go with a stage 2 Pro Charger set up. So it will probably be. I'll get the code wrong, and somebody will pull me, but I think it's a D1SC. So it's slightly above their standard Pro Charger.
Okay.
With an intercooler and balancer, etc., etc. That should give me in the region of around 650 rear wheel horsepower.
What do you need that for?
Because it's fun. I am going to do a transmission rebuild. In fact, the fucker was supposed to ring me back and he hasn't done. Just reminded him. So it's going to get a transmission rebuild. But the stock, it's got a 70 HP in it. So the stock transmission should handle the power as long as I'm not a dickhead with it. And I don't aim to be. Now, a lot of people have said, why didn't I go Whipple? Why didn't I go Roots? Why have I gone Pro? A couple of reasons. I don't want loads of low-end torque because it's not going to hook anyway. It's a pickup. There's no weight over the axle, so there's no reason for it. So it's more what I'm going to end up doing with it, more likely than not, is I'll speak American, freeway cruising.
Okay.
When little people in their M3s and M5s think that they've got power, well, they're going to suddenly realise they're going to be embarrassed by a 12-year-old pickup truck as it just shoots off and destroys them. So that's the basic. Plus, because it's my daily, a Pro Charger gives me much better fuel economy at normal driving.
Okay. Guys, I got to tell you, I've been in the car with Dave driving. It is, I'm not going to say terrifying, but I'm looking for a word that's a little bit less than terrifying.
That man whose T-shirt you're wearing.
Alex?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's
terrifying,
insane, man.
He's terrifying.
You guys, so the other thing is, too, that when you're in the UK and you're on the freeway, their fast lane is our slow lane. So they cut over to the right and then just freaking haul. And it's kind of terrifying because I'm used to that being the lane you want to be most careful on because I'm used to traffic coming in that side. So it's very interesting. I gotta tell you, man.
I did consider pushing things further, but I don't know how much power I can shove through a stock transfer case and diffs.
Get a new one.
Well, I don't know if there's an aftermarket transfer case. I'd love to take the truck up to 1,000.
Oh, God.
But not rear wheel crank. So 1,000 at crank. I'd love to take the truck up to 1,000 at crank, but it's what I'd need to do, transfer case, etc. diffs in order to handle that sort of power. Obviously, a transmission rebuild's an obvious one, but I don't know what I'd need to do to handle that power. And then the other project is the Nova. So I've got a 72 Pro Street Nova.
That's a cool car. I like it.
Which is a 427 big block.
And that's what I thought the Pro Charger was going to be going in. Like, I thought you were going to charge that thing up or something.
I want a roots charger on that. I'm going to put a blower on that.
Okay.
Now, the truck is going to be running about 10.1, 10.4 compression, whereas the 427 is running 11.4. It's running TSW pistons, so forged pistons. It's got Ohio crank, ARP heads, studs and everything. It's an oval head that's already been ported. I don't know what the cam is. I need to try and find out what the cam is in that. But I want to put a roots type blower on that.
Okay. I don't even know the stuff you're saying, but I can imagine what it would sound
so
like.
that's the thing that sits on top with the big belt.
That's what I thought it might have been.
The Mad Max looking thing.
Yeah.
So I want to put an 871 on that. But the issue I have with that is that's only a 2-bolt main, and I don't know if it will stand it. I'm sort of the thoughts that, well, sod it, put it on anyway. And if it tears the main bearings out, then we'll need a new block anyway. So we might as well wreck that block and get a new one. But I don't know. I'm umming and ahhing on that, whether I go that far.
And hey, shout out to Derek for helping you with try to get a Pro Charger.
Derek has been amazing. He has been really, really helpful, and shout out to him and his boss. Just 2 seconds as well, because I did want to say that, and don't normally do this sort of shit, but he's stepped up and offered the support to us. So I did want to say that. Oh, he hasn't mentioned the company he works for, but if he does, then I'd love to big him up, because he's been really, really helpful.
Do you think that they want to be mentioned on our show?
I don't know. That's the point. I never thought of that. Yeah, but yeah. So that's the daily.
We'll find out, because I know the website to his company, but we'll find out before we, maybe they're like, well, thanks a lot, but can you erase that, because we don't want to be tied to you too.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I'm glad I haven't said the company name. But yes, so that's the basic plan. Is a stage 2 Pro Charger set with a DS1C, so intercooler, valve release, balancer.
I want to get an idea of something here. I want to try to
give me some nice power.
Let me ask you. So, what's the average speed limit on your freeways?
70.
70, and you guys are miles per hour too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm just trying to get a feel, guys, to explain to you a little bit so we can all understand how Dave drives. So, if the speed limit is 70, what's a good average speed limit or speed to do in a 70?
I generally drive at 75.
Are you being truthful?
No, if I'm on the motorway, I'll generally do 75. I do go quicker, but I will generally sit on the cruise control at 75. If it's quiet, I'll push it up to 80. It just depends where the speed cameras are.
And what about if you need to get around people? Say there's some people doing things and you're like, oh, these guys are going slow and I need to zip. What's a reasonable amount to go in a 70 to get around people, when you have justification to do so?
Hey, it all depends. I've been known to clip 90 and 100 before now. I mean, when I run out to the lab, I've been known to clip 140 going there, just because there's no speed cameras or coppers on that road very often.
That's what, when I drove with Alex, they were like, go real fast, and then all of a sudden slow down. And they're like, I see that box up there? That's a camera.
If I know I'm on a cameraed road, I'll generally just sit at 75, because the cameras tend to give you 10%.
Okay.
So I'll sit at 75, and that way I don't get a flash. If I'm on a non-cameraed road, it all depends on what I'm doing and where I'm going. I'm quite happy to toddle along some days. Other days I'll give it some shit.
There was one point when I was going to school in Ann Arbor, and there's this long stretch of country road, and there was never anybody on it, and it usually was like a 25-minute drive from where I lived to get to Ann Arbor, and I found it, and it was like a 50-mile-an-hour road. There were times, Dave, that I was getting to Ann Arbor in like 15 minutes. This is years ago when I was like 22 or something.
Oh, I mean, years ago you could get away with it a lot more.
I ended up getting a ticket though, unfortunately. I deserved it too. He was shocked. He was like, "Do you realize?" He was like a new cop. He's like, "Do you realize how fast you were going?" I was like, "Oh, no, I must not have been paying attention."
I don't know if you have it over there. We have what they call average speed cameras.
We might. I don't know.
So what these are is cameras that are set up with a set distance in between them.
Oh, wow.
So they take a picture when you pass the first one, and they take a picture when you pass the second one, and they time difference that to work out your average speed.
So they're like, "There's no way you could have gotten here if you were."
Yeah. So you can't speed. Whereas a stock speed camera, all you do is slow down for it, and then you can speed back up again if you wish.
Yeah.
With an average, you can't do that because it's based on the time difference between the two cameras. So you have to stick to the speed limit throughout.
I could see that for sure.
Well, we generally have about a 10% leeway, so I usually will sit sort of 5% over the speed limit.
Yeah, we're 70 as well on the freeway. And so you can do 75 all day. You really could get away with 80. A lot of people are driving. Nobody's driving 75 or nobody's driving 70. You know what I mean? It's all 75, 80.
I mean, I came back from Wales on Sunday, and I pretty much sat at 75 most of the way.
Okay, yeah.
But then I had to go to the lab Sunday night, and bear in mind I'd already driven about 500 miles at this point. So obviously I wanted that trip to be as short as I could.
Yeah.
So I sat 80, 85 most of that.
Your truck is not a lot of people have full-size U.S.-made pickup trucks out there. I wonder, so here, pickup trucks are not going to stand out. They blend right in because every second or third person has one. Does that stand out on the road there? Like, do you think cops will notice it?
Well, I said we don't tend to see a lot of cops on the roads anymore like we used to. We have...
It's just the cameras.
We have these traffic officers who are not police and therefore can't arrest you. They can record it. They can record evidence and record, but they're there for traffic management and accidents and stuff like that.
Oh.
Actual highway cops, which we used to have a fair chunk of, we don't see them very often now. To be honest, I mean. I say in that 600 miles I drove on Sunday, I don't think I saw one patrolling police car on the motorways at all.
What about local, like city and stuff?
They tend to not bother unless you're because they're not quick cars, so they can't catch you anyway.
Okay.
But they will radio it in.
Yeah.
I mean, what you can get over here is now the public can record you and send that in, and you can get prosecuted that way.
You're kidding me.
No, now they can't prosecute. They can't prosecute you for speed.
Okay.
Because it's not a calibrated speed check, so they can't. But they can prosecute you for driving like a dick.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So people will use webcams to get people prosecuted for driving like dicks.
Wow. Huh, that's rotten, man. You need to get somebody else in trouble like that. Keep to yourself.
I mean, I've opened up the Nova on the motorway before now, quite a few times.
I would hope so. That's what it's made for, right?
But I've only just, little short blasts and little traffic light runs and stuff, because I don't take it down the straight because it's a fun car.
There's these guys that I saw online that one of them got arrested. His name, he called himself Speed Benz, I think it was. And I might be wrong on that name, something Benz. But he was intentionally getting chased by cops, and he had a supercar. So these guys will drive very fast cars and get into situations where then they outrun the police. And they're like talking about like even outrunning, like you can outrun a helicopter in a Lamborghini if you have freeway, that you can continue driving on. And they would record it all and then upload it. That's how one of them got caught.
There's definitely young lads out here. Maybe, I don't know if it's so much now. When I was growing up, there were definitely lads out here that would get a chase off the old bill so they could test their driving skills and try and get away from them.
What's the craziest thing you ever did on the road?
Never really done. I've driven at speed, but I've always driven at speed where I felt it was safe enough to do so. I've never been one that's particularly been one for swerving in and out. I played chicken with a mate of mine.
Never did anything really, but I did.
No,
play chicken
this
once.
one thing. I played chicken with a mate of mine on the motorway, and I pushed him off effectively.
Yeah,
didn't actually touch him. I probably because I was full of fucking gear.
Really?
So
How old were you during this, first of all?
In my 20s.
Okay, yeah.
And I pushed him off to the side of the road, and lucky for him, there happened to be an exit ramp, so we just went up there.
Okay, yeah.
So
and
that's
this is a friend. This is a friend.
Dumbest shit I've done, yeah. But generally, my driving's not being super stupid.
Good.
And these days, I use the speed when it is sensible to do so.
Yeah. I did one really dumb thing one time, and I had it was a little Nissan, and it wasn't like a nice car or anything. And I was coming back from the gym, and over on our fast lane, it was backed up because there was an exit on that side, and so you had to like stop and then go, and then stop and then go. And when it was time to go, I tried to leave space and stuff. This guy tried to cut through the line, and he had this little convertible car, and he pulled right in front of me and pushes his way in, like to the point where I had to stop on my brake and all that. Dave, I got so mad at him. And then he gives me the finger because I honk at him, right? So I wait, and now we're stopping and going and stopping and going. And when it was time to go, I drove around him on the shoulder and then pushed my way back in front of him. He got so mad. He was like, he pulled out next to me and he was like, pull over. He was like some 50-year-old dude. He was like, dude, he was upset.
I
would have hit, like it was one of, I guess, kind of chicken, because I was like, I'm going to hit him if he doesn't move. He had to let me in.
Yeah, there was...
that was a long time ago.
There was one. It was raining. I was in the fast lane. There was a car in front of me, so it wasn't like I could go much faster.
Yeah.
All right, I wasn't right up the car's arse. I was giving him plenty of room, but I was giving him plenty of room because it was pissing down with rain.
Yeah.
And this arsehole came up the back of me and started riding my bumper. I just ignored him. I was like, I can't go anywhere, so where are you going to go? So he undertook me. So he took me on the wrong side.
Oh, yeah.
And then started hurling abuse.
Oh, okay.
So he got it back. So he signalled to come off the motorway. And I was like, yeah, you fucker right. So I followed him off. And he pulled up on the lay-by. Now, this guy's got a young kid in the car with him as well. This is the bit that I thought was just ridiculous. So I pulled off, and he gets out being the big one. So I got out. So he got back in his car and tried to get me to follow him. It's like, yeah, right, dumb fuck. So he drove off, and I just got back on the motorway and went on my way. But, I don't... Char really suffers with road rage. She's terrible for it.
Are you kidding
generally
me?
For me, it doesn't bother me. It's like, you want to be a dick, be a dick. I just let you be a dick. You know what I mean? It's pointless.
I let it go nowadays too, man. I just try to. Yeah, there's no sense, dude. And plus, here you could get shot. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, it maybe not shot, but getting attacked is definitely something that I'm more conscious of these days, because little dicks carry knives, and then they. It's not that they're brave enough to use them; they're just stupid enough to use them.
That they might, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the other thing is, it's just like, who cares? I mean,
yep.
You end up, and this is sort of makes a little bit of life advice for today, actually.
All right.
You end up creating more stress and negativity for yourself.
Yeah.
By getting wound up by this situation than you do for the person that's causing it. And if you just let them go, let them rant and rave and fucking have their anger day and just, whatever, fuck off. I'm not interested.
Yep.
And then it doesn't cause you any harm, does it?
Yeah, dude. Either way, you're gonna. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I try to do the same thing nowadays and not get involved in all that stuff because it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the
doesn't
odd
help.
occasion. I mean, it's going to be nice having a truck with that sort of power that if somebody in a semi-quick car thinks they're clever, you can just go, whoa!
So are you gonna be able to? You'll be faster than most of those cars on the street. Then is what you're telling me.
So, granted, it's a box on wheels, and so they're taking that away, but I will have 650 horsepower going to the road.
And what do you currently have now?
300 and a bit.
Okay, so literally more.
No,
than
not
double.
even that, actually. It's 400 at the crank currently. That's the stock 5.7. It's 395, 405 at the crank or something.
Okay.
So what you got to remember, I don't know how... the power coming out of the engine is significantly reduced by the time it gets to the wheel.
Okay.
The more mechanical links you have in that, the more power you lose. Because my truck's four-wheel drive, it goes through a transmission, then it goes through a transfer case, I lose more power.
Yeah.
So a 720 McLaren, it's a 720 McLaren because it has 720 horsepower at the crank, and puts somewhere between 650 and 680 on the road.
Okay.
So I will have the equivalent power on the road as a 720 McLaren, which is a supercar.
Yeah. And granted, you're not in the light little supercar, but
can you imagine a man that spent in excess of £150,000 on his supercar to have an old American truck keep up with him? That is going to be funny as fuck.
It'll be good. You need to get those dash cams is what you need so you can record this stuff. 3D. What do? They have the 360 cams that float behind the car. You need one of those.
But yeah, so it's silly things like that will amuse me.
I appreciate that. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for hanging with us. And, of course, go to evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your labs done by Dave. Go to supplementsource.ca for Canadians. They have great deals that change week to week. Stromsports.com. That's Strom Sports Nutrition. There's a little comment section there when you place your order. You can tell them that Dave and Scott say hello. Or just give them some crap. Tell them, what should they say to Richard?
I don't know.
Something mean, right? Something awful. Something to get under his skin, right?
He's just... tell him that MMA is just an excuse to sniff other men's crotches.
There you go. That sounds good. It's just, he can't argue with you. You're his customer. The customer's always right. Also, go to truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. And we appreciate you tuning in. Leave us questions for the next show. If you haven't subscribed yet, guys, what are you doing with your life? Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for another episode of the podcast with Dave Crosland. We will see you soon. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Dave.
And don't forget to contribute to the Supercharger Fund because I can't afford it, so I need to save up. So any help, a poor man here, needs speed.